The views that were expressed during the copyright consultations that we did last year were as diverse as the stakeholders themselves. So you can imagine how challenging it was for our government to develop comprehensive legislation that tries to find the right balance of the needs of all stakeholders and the long-term interests of all Canadians. And I'm pleased to say that I believe that our government has done just that. And also, there's a provision in this legislation that mandates a review every 5 years by law. There will be a 5-year review of this legislation of the House of Commons to make sure that Canada's copyright regime does not fall back into the state of disrepair as it is today. And this is an important thing to add here. Canada has not, sadly, elected a majority government since 2000. We're working on that. But we haven't elected a majority government since November 27th of 2000. So for 10 years since 2004, we've had minority parliaments. And who knows if that may well be the norm for a while. We cannot allow the contemporary politics and the lack of leadership to tackle tough issues to stop Canada from addressing the necessary amendments that will come into place with regard to copyright reform to meet our digital realities. We have to confront these. And if the politicians aren't prepared to do that, and we wait for 13 years of stagnation before we finally table legislation, then what we're going to do in this legislation is mandate the politicians, whoever is in power, whoever is the Heritage Industry Minister, whoever is the Prime Minister, that you must, every 5 years, examine your copyright regime and make sure that it stays up to date. Canadians deserve this. With our legislation as well, Bill C-32, we are ensuring that Canada's copyright laws are forward-looking, flexible, and in accordance with the current international standards. The bill implements the rights and protections of the WIPO treaties and brings Canada in line with these international standards that are expected of a nation such as ours. There are new rights and protections that are compatible with international standards, and that will allow creators and copyright-based industries to better compete on the international stage. For example, the Making Available right will allow creators to control how their works are made available online. This updated legislation will allow us to fulfill our commitment to bring Canada's copyright in line with those of our G8 trading partners. It has been more than a decade since Canada's copyright legislation was last reformed, and this is the most comprehensive effort to modernize our laws that we have seen in over a decade. Modernized legislation will support Canada as we embrace the challenges of the digital environment and take a leadership role in the global digital economy. It will contribute to an environment that gives Canadians the tools that they need to maintain a creative, innovative, and competitive economy internationally. And I want to mention as well the digital economy strategy. Our government knows that a strong digital economy will contribute to a more prosperous and competitive Canada. The strategy that we are developing will enable information and communications technology sector to create new products and services and accelerate the adoption of digital technologies and contribute to the improved cybersecurity practices by industry and by consumers. We recognize that digital media and content will drive the demand for devices and broadband infrastructure. This means that for a digital strategy to be effective, it will need to have a digital media and content at its very center. On May 10th, I, along with my colleagues, Ministers Clement and Minister Finlay, launched the digital economy consultation process. We are seeking public input to help inform the development of a comprehensive, multi-year digital economy strategy based on 5 themes: innovation using digital technologies, building a world-class digital infrastructure, growing the information and communications technology industry, and Canada's digital content requirements, and building on Canada's digital skills. Further information about this is online at digitaleconomy.gc.ca. And I know there are a lot of good ideas that are around there on this issue, and that's because it really matters, and people are very much invested in this issue. As the speech from the throne also mentioned, and our most recent budget illustrates, developing a digital economy strategy is a priority for our government, which is why we've made investments in modernized programs like the Canada Media Fund and the Canada Magazine Fund, and all the implements of making investments to ensure that there's always a digital component to these investments. We have also announced anti-spam legislation and an update to our privacy laws for the digital age to provide more secure online environment for both consumers and for businesses. As well, we've put forward amendments to the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, which will better protect consumers, and at the same time will ensure that critical business information is available to Canadian businesses so they can continue to compete in the global marketplace. As you can see, we have been very busy on this portfolio of issues, from the digital strategy to the copyright legislation, to ensure that Canada is competitive in this new era. And our government knows that copyright is the source of a great deal of economic activity in Canada. And we also know that in order for our digital economy to flourish, we need comprehensive digital economy strategy that includes a modernized copyright framework. In order to develop this legislation, we consulted widely with Canadians, and we took their concerns into account. And I believe that the legislation that we've introduced reflects a fair and balanced approach that will support innovation, creativity, and economic growth. It addresses the challenges that are faced by copyright owners, and at the same time, it legitimizes many everyday activities of Canadian consumers in the digital age. Bill C-32 advances our government's ongoing work to make Canada the most attractive destination in the world for foreign capital investment. It equips businesses with new legal options that allows them to protect their intellectual property, thereby encouraging continued innovation and investment here in Canada. Its targeted provisions for innovative companies will ensure the continued dynamic creation of new technologies here at home. It reflects our government's desire to work cooperatively with other levels of government, with Canadian stakeholders, and with the international community to ensure that creativity and innovation continue to be Canada's economic future. So we are working hard to ensure that Bill C-32, the Copyright Modernization Act, becomes law. And we need your ongoing support to ensure that Canada has copyright legislation that will serve you and indeed all Canadians now and very well into the future. Thank you all very much. You notice, by the way, I've just been speaking to you for about 15 or 20 minutes. Not once did I mention Bloc Québécois, New Democratic Party, or Liberal Party. This is, in my judgment, there are issues that can be left-right, but there are issues that if you are actually a public servant operating in good faith and trying to leave the country a little better off than the way it was when you got elected, that you can come together with good ideas and make things work. So I'm not here to bash any of my opposition parties. We may have some disagreements on policies, but we want to see this work. And as a sign of that, what we've decided to do with this legislation is send it to a standalone legislative committee. So it won't be going to the Heritage Committee or the Industry Committee, which has a fixed timetable every week where they sit for 4 hours per week, twice a week, and they have locked-in schedules and other obligations, but a standalone committee dealing just with this legislation that will have members from both the Industry and Heritage Committee and other members at it. They can set their own schedule. They can have a witness list as broad or as narrow as they want. They can have as much consideration of this legislation as they want, and we're open to having meaningful ideas come forward that actually might see their way into legislation. We're open to these kinds of ideas, but that's what I think this kind of legislation is something that's as important as this to Canada deserves, which is serious adults dealing with serious, complex legislation, sitting in a room, thinking about it, talking about it, considering what's the best way to go forward, and having that discussion, and that's what we're prepared to do. And those absolutists out there who are babyish in their approach to copyright legislation, who think that any idea that copyright reform would be an attack on individual citizens, are people who frankly don't get it. And let me amend what I said then just a minute ago. Don't ignore those voices. Those people who are out there who are saying that copyright legislation, copyright reform is not good, these are people who are dressing up the fact that they don't believe in copyright reform at all, right? Those people out there who don't believe in copyright at all, they will say, well, Bill C-61, the old copyright legislation, we disagreed with these specific provisions. Well, Bill C-32, we have these specific amendments. Don't fool yourself. These voices that are out there, these people out there who pretend to be experts that the media cite all the time, they don't believe in any copyright reform whatsoever. And they will find any excuse to oppose this bill, to drum up fear, to mislead, to misdirect, and to push people in the wrong direction, and to undermine what has been a meaningful, comprehensive, year-long effort to get something right. This hasn't been done, as I said, since 1997, 3 years after I graduated high school. It's been a long time. We need to amend our legislation. And those people out there who try to pretend that they're copyright experts and they want to amend copyright in a meaningful way, don't be fooled by some of these people. They don't believe in any copyright. They don't believe in individuals' right to protect their own creations. And when they speak, they need to be confronted. If it's on Facebook, if it's on Twitter, or if it's on a talk show, or if it's in a newspaper, confront them and tell them that they are wrong. Canada, from the Hudson Bay Company through FTA and NAFTA to the G8 and G20, Canada always has been, always will be a trading nation. Our future and our past and our prosperity has always been dependent on investment into Canada, being in compliance with international standards, opening ourselves up to the world, welcoming investment, and working with the world, not being an outlier in the world, disregarding international treaties like WIPO that we've signed, disregarding our obligations to protect foreign investment into Canada, Canadian investment into Canadian businesses. We need to protect those investments, protect those jobs, and make sure that those voices who try to find technical, nonsensical, fear-mongering reasons to oppose copyright reform are confronted every step of the way, and they are defeated. And when we do that, this bill will pass and Canada will be better for it.